and we're going to preset the strap. So to do that, just allow yourself to sit and bring the soles of the feet together, but have them a distance apart that feels comfortable. So you can get the legs to really drop down out to the side. So you'll notice that if you bring the feet in, your knees will come up higher naturally. And if you go too far away, your feet sort of start to open out. So you want to have the feet together, number one rule, and a comfortable distance down is the second objective. And then you're going to take the strap and just allow yourself to have a little bit of excess room in there. Now, there's lots of different ways that you can set the strap up around the thighs, but the easiest way is called cradling, where you just take it straight around the outside of the knees, you sort any twists up, and then you're going to just adjust the strap so that the strap is actually holding the legs. So you're not dropping quite into the joints and the muscles and tendons, you're just a little bit out of that. And you also want to, when we finally come down, have, if you've got a buckle, not have it touching the skin, so it just digs in otherwise. So having done that, we're going to lie down onto the floor. So I'll just use my elbows to come down onto my side and bring the feet in. Take the strap around, turn the soles of the feet together, and then just lie the feet back down to the floor. So I'm already in a nice safe position with the pelvis. I'm just lowering the feet down, and hopefully the legs feel completely supported. And we can just let the hands out to the side. We're going to let ourselves sink into the ground a little bit, kind of relax the day out of the body. Let the body get used to a different shape. Let it get used to letting go. Try to breathe in through the belly first, and let that breath move into the chest, the collarbones. So we're starting to get a very smooth expansion into the ribs as well. And allow yourself to loosen the jaw a little bit. Let the tongue drift away from the roof of the mouth. Let the eyes be closed softly. So they sit in their sockets with the brow of your face nice and relaxed. Now, there is a good chance that having got down here, you might elect to stay here for the rest of the class. So we're going to be here for about another minute and a half. Now, from this position with the legs cradled, you have two options. One, you could just bring your hands in and take hold of the strap and just draw that towards yourself, and that will slide the knees back up. Or you can take the hands underneath the thighs and lift them in. want to avoid just moving the legs by themselves. Otherwise, it's a little bit of a strain to go from relaxing to lifting back up. You want to give them some assist. And then once you've done that, bring your heels in towards your bottom. And we're going to take the strap around the right foot and lengthen the leg out. So it doesn't have to be directly straight up. If that's sort of pulling on your lower back, then have the heel a little bit further away, no problem. And then I'm just going to bring my 2 bricks and bring them towards the side of my mat, kind of in line with my hip a little bit. I'm going to take my right hand close towards my foot and then bind the strap around the fist so my fingers and my thumb can hold on to it. And it gives me control to let the arm slide away a little bit further and release the strap if I want to, but it also makes it less stressful on keeping the strap just between your hands. Trying to grip on is not a great way of holding. Now I'm going to take the left foot a little bit further out to the side so the knee points up easily to the sky, and then slowly, after several breaths, just let that leg hang out to the side. Now the idea is that you get to a point where the leg is resting on your bolster, your cushions, or your bricks, or whatever you're using. And then you can let, if this left hip has lifted up, you start to let that release down. Now with the legs supported with the bricks, so you might need to move them out or in a little bit and play around, then the amount of work that you're doing with the hand and the arm becomes less. It's less work on the shoulders, so it's more easy to rest into. You've got to be here for a couple of minutes. Let's assume that we've been in position for about half of that. And we're trying to let the muscles, not just in the right hip, but on the left side of the body, all the muscles around and inside the pelvic girdle, sinking down into the mat. So it takes quite a big connection of mind and body to work out where you can release, what goes where, what hangs on, what is connected to something else. Now we're going to start to use the hand to draw the leg back up. So it's the same thing that we had before. We don't want all the work to go into the groin, otherwise it just goes from doing nothing to a total shock of lifting the whole leg up. You can bend the knee, untangle the strap from the foot, and then just move whatever device props you're using across to the opposite side. And then draw that left foot in. Around the ball joints of the foot is a little bit more comfortable than the arch. Left hand rises up, bind around. And then we wiggle the right foot out a little bit so it's easier for the knee to point up towards the sky. Get a relatively straight leg, relax the shoulders down, and then ease that leg out again. We're going to take a few moments for that to happen. Now, the last time I did this, I was a little bit too close and ended up burning my foot on the radiator. And I've got a funny feeling I'm going to do that again. Don't you guys worry about that too much. And just easing into that block and then trying to let the right hip down towards the floor. That is perhaps a more complex issue, to let that relax down. And we'll start to draw that arm back into the equation, lifting up. Sorry to mention equations again. And we'll let ourselves settle that down again. So we'll just take the strap out to the side. Now I'm going to take the block out from behind my head because I want the head to be flat to the floor. And I'm going to take my 2 bricks and put them on top of my blocks because we're going to come up into a supported bridge. So you might have less or more. Again, you could use the bolster, not a problem. Have the feet a little wider than the hips for the restorative version, so the knees kind of naturally move in towards the center line a little bit. Press down into the feet as you draw your belly in. Allow yourself to peel your tailbone away from the floor, and then just slide your props underneath. Now you want to make sure that whatever your props you're using, that they have a sturdy foundation, so just tidy the edges up, nothing hanging over the edge or something precariously. And then make sure that you're resting your pelvis, the back of your pelvis, just before it sort of becomes the spine, that part of the pelvis, the sort of 2 bounds, little prominent points a little bit out to the side of it, those are what we want to be sitting on. And then take the hands to the side, or you can take the hands out wide and just let yourself come into more of a cactus arm position. So you begin to open the chest a little bit. Some people like to take the hands all the way out so that the arms are parallel to the body and just lengthening out behind them on the ground. But wherever you are, you really want to have the shoulders, the elbows and the wrists and forearms in connection with the floor. And see if you can let the muscles across the front of the belly relax, and these big hip flexor muscles that connect the thighs into the pelvis and into that groin area. I want to see if we can let those guys release a little bit. Now the corresponding effect of letting the muscles around the front of the belly release is we want to see if we can get the back muscles to do the same in cooperation. So for every ounce of effort you manage to lose in the abdominals, hopefully we get an ounce of effort being lost in the back as well. So everything starts to feel like it can rest, it can be safe and happy. We're not moving into a particularly unusual position. If there is any discomfort in the back, then perhaps you've moved a little higher than you needed to. You can adjust. So we're going to stay here for another couple of minutes. Now we're going to slowly lift ourselves out of this pose. So I want you to draw the abdominal muscles in a little bit so they tighten up. start to press into the feet. That will help with that process and get the lower back to feel like it's joined in a little bit. We're going to lift just a fraction off of the blocks and then move them out to the side and take a good 3 or 4 breaths to kind of roll the spine very gently, link by link in the vertebrae down onto the ground. And once we're there, we'll stay there for a moment. And then we're going to very gently roll on to whichever side you find easiest to lift from. Just using your hands to press into the floor. Make sure you move on the exhale to come up. And we'll come up to sitting. Once you've come up and your spine and everything feels like it's come back to life, you're going to come onto all fours. Now, I'm going to bring the knees about hip distance apart underneath, and the bootlaces are down, and the hands are underneath the shoulders. I'm going to slide my left knee forwards as far as I can. So the choices are to sit down onto the heel there. So the heel is underneath the sitting bone, and the knee is pointing forwards, and then stretch the back foot away. Or if you want to, you can just bring your left hand in for a moment, and then allow the left knee to travel out to the side, bring the hands back. So the heel is still pretty much underneath the sitting bone. It's in that direction, but the knee is out to the side. You're going to lift up onto the knuckles. So again, you want to make sure that the hands are right underneath the shoulders. And you can let the shoulders kind of just hunch up around your ears a little bit. Let the chest sink through. We want to try and get the forces going down through the shoulders, into the elbows, into the wrists as pretty much a straight line. And then you can let that spine rest down to the floor. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you hold the head up or hang down. It's going to be more of a personal choice, whatever allows you to kind of rest the body down. Now we'll start to move out of that. So bring the hands back into play. They need a little bit of a stretch. I find the easiest way to lift out of this is to just walk the toes of the back foot in a little bit, and then I can lift myself up much more easily and come back up onto all fours. So just my starting position again. And then I'm going to slide the right knee as far forward as I can. Walk the foot out. Remember, you can stay in that position if you want, or bring the hand in and just pivot the knee out to the side. So a little bit of a lift. And then when you feel that you've got in position, you can bring those hands back up into knuckles and let everything sink down. Now we're going to start to come back out of that. So you can come out the same way if you wish to. We're going to end up towards the front of the mat in a seating position. So another alternative is just to roll down onto the right cheek and draw the left leg through, which is a nice, easy proposition. Now we're going to, once you come into your seating position, you want to try and cross the shins rather than the ankles. Have the feet a good distance away, so there's about 12, 16 inches, something like that, between the heel and the hip. I guess that depends a little bit on how long your legs are, so forget about that. Just the distance. And allow yourself to just rock out through the sitting bones. Now you might prefer to sit in this position on a block. It will just change the angles in the ankles a little bit if they're stressed at all, or the knees, and just draw the flesh out a little bit. Now we are going to show some different ways of using the bolster. We're going to come into a little bit of a forward fold. So you could just take the hands out and just lay flat to the floor. Great if you can do that. Not all of us can. If you've got a bolster and it's a stronger bolster than mine, you can actually just lean into the bolster. Give yourself a little bit of angle and a bit more stretch into the hips. Or you can bring the bolster in front and then bring the forearms down on there. So you could supplement that with block and a couple of bricks. Wherever you've got to, you're going to take the hands forwards. You're going to lift the hips up a little bit to get some space, and then folding over. Just taking your time to ease in. It's big on the hips, so don't be in a rush. Find your place that's comfortable, and then allow yourself to rest. And again, you can decide what you want to do with the shoulders and the head. So you can hunch around a little bit, let the head drop. You can take the elbows out a little wider and let the shoulders expand out a little wider. Keep the head in line with the body. It's your choice. It needs to feel comfortable. There is a big sense of stretch around the outside of the hips. No getting away from that, because that's the main point of the pose. And the yin practice, there's a pose called fire log, and you can do it with blocks and bricks, etc., underneath the thighs to support. It's a more extreme version than this for the knees and the ankles. So I do this as a safer alternative. But if you're at all curious and you want to go and Google fire log yin practice, you'll probably find an explanation from a chap called Bernie Clark on YouTube. That would be a good one to watch. Let ourselves lift up, so just using the hands to draw ourselves back up. Take a note of which leg's in front, and then see if you can cross them over. You might need to stretch them out a little bit, not a problem if you do. And just wriggle around, get yourself comfortable. It's going to feel different to the previous side. You remember you're coming to the beginning of the pose. You're remembering how you finished the end of the pose. So where you get to might be different as well on each side. When you feel ready, you can take that breath and lift your body up. Start to hinge forwards. Work out where you want to place the arms and hands, what props you're going to use. Ease yourself down nice and slowly, still coming in. Allow yourself to get familiar with the pose and then rest. Just breathe. Find space wherever your body offers it to you. And then we can use the hands again to lift back out of that. So I'm going to move the props out to the side. I'm going to use my flat block again. So untangle the legs, just roll back a little bit to untangle. So hello to your knees and your ankles. You might want to make some gentle circles. With the toes in the air, get everything a little bit of a stretch. And then we're going to come back up onto all fours. We're going to come into something called shoelace pose with the legs. And there is a half version of that as well. So half version, you would sit on the floor. One leg would be completely out in front of you, and the other leg would be wrapped over, and the heel comes back, and we squeeze the thighs together so you couldn't even get a slice of paper through there. That's the half version. The full version, up on all fours. Take the block back towards about the heels, not an absolute science. Then we bring the knees together, take a little breath. We're going to slide the left knee forwards, bring the foot over so they cross, and then squeeze the thighs back together. So again, you might need to sort of have a little wriggle around just to get the flesh and everything else in the right place. And then we take the feet out as wide as the mat, which takes a little bit of thinking about, and we slowly roll back. Now, if there's any sharp pains in the knees, ankles, or the hips, you just lift yourself back. So you want to come down slowly and see how it feels. I know most of us have done this before. And again, see if you can land on the block. So the other point of coming back slowly is it gives you a chance to find it. So we're going to sit up nice and tall just for a moment with hands on the thighs. So again, there should be, we're aiming to get to a point where we're unable to even get our hands through between the thighs. Fuller expression of the pose, the shins would actually be running parallel to the front of the mat. You can see clearly that my heels are pointing towards the back of the mat, which is where it's safe for my knees to be. That's the amount of articulation I've got in my hip joints. So that's where textbook and people's anatomy differ. So you find a comfortable place to be in. Now I'm going to take my left hand out to the side a little bit, walk the fingers out, place the palm onto the floor. So I've got a little bit of a side bend going on here. Now take my right arm up and just bend at the elbow and float that over the top of the crown of the head. And then I'm going to see if I can slowly bend the bottom elbow just a little bit more. I want to keep both sitting bones on the floor. So if they lift, you just press back into the hand to lift up again. Now you could, if you have a bolster, be using the bolster to the side and just placing the elbow on there. You could have used the bricks if they was of the right type of height. You might find that just taking the bend over and keeping the arm straight is where you are, so props would be irrelevant. Now, this is another one of those ones where you can find quite a drastic difference between side A and side B. Hopefully get a nice stretch down the side of the body on the right and some interesting feelings in the legs. We'll press into that left hand to lift ourselves back up and draw the right hand down to the floor. I use the fingers to lift myself up and lean forward. So I'm pretty much coming out the way that I came in. Untangle the legs. Bring the knees together underneath. You might want to stretch the legs out. And then when you're ready, you're going to take the right knee forwards, thread that across. Again, have a little bit of time to ease into that. You can see me rocking backwards and forwards, just getting the thighs, getting the tissues, clothing all organized, and the feet out to the side. And then I begin to slowly sit back. And again, see if we can land on the block. Take a little time to sit up nice and tall. And I'll take the right hand out to the side. Just walk the fingers off a little bit. Get a little bit more of a lean. Remember, both sitting bones touching the ground. Left arm comes up and folds over. When you're ready, if that feels good, you take a little bend into the elbows. So if you use the props, you'd move them across obviously to the second side. And then we'll press into the hands to lift back up. And since we've finished with that, we can untangle the legs completely. And again, just use those little circles with the toes in the air. Gives us a nice stretch into all the muscles in the legs. We'll come back up onto all fours, and we're going to take saddle pose. So we want to have the block in portrait down the mat if it's not already. We're going to come onto all fours, but this time we're going to bring the knees together. Take the feet out wider than the hips so we can sit back onto the block. Now, if you don't need the block, great. But if you need more than the block, that's fine. You can even be sitting on the end of the bolster, because that would be, if it's not like mine, that would be considerably higher and would be much easier on the thigh muscles and the knees. We need a little bit of time for those calf muscles to kind of receive the pose a little bit, I guess you could say, and become a little bit more malleable. When you move your body into a position that stresses the muscles, the nerves fire up, and it takes 5 or 6 breaths to start to get any kind of release in there. Obviously, if the flesh kind of binds a little bit, you can use your hands to move that around as well. And generally sitting up nice and tall, relax shoulders. Now we're going to take this up a notch, and you might want to move, if you have a bolster, move it a little bit towards the back of the mat. Going to lift up just a little bit, take the hands forwards, and then draw the right foot through. Allow myself to sit back down, and as I do, I just want to have the right cheek on the bolster. So you might, sorry, on the block. So you might want to just move it across an inch or so. So we come back gently into the same position. We're going to keep the released leg, sole of the foot to the floor, and knee pointing up towards the sky. We'll start to focus on the pelvis, which we want to drop backwards. So we start to lean. Now you can draw the belly in and let the pelvis sit behind. I would do that with the hands on the floor behind you and ease yourself in. Now, wherever position you get to, you can allow yourself to walk the hands out quite some considerable way, and you can put a little bit of a bend into the elbows. But you want to make sure that the bent knee that is on the floor is actually touching the ground. If it's lifted off, then you've come too far. If you notice that your chest is kind of lifting up and arching, drawing the belly towards the sky, again, you've come a little too far. You want to be allowing the belly button to sink back towards the ground a little bit. Now you could bring that bolster behind you and then just bend the elbows and sit back onto that. You might even be able to get the elbows onto the floor, even in this position without the bolster. But remember, it's sometimes less is more. And we are trying to work on stretching out the big hip flexor muscles in the front of the thigh, allowing the lower back and the pelvis to relax, to accommodate that. So if you try too hard to get in deep, you add tension back into the body, and you kind of get a bit of a false result in the stretch in the thigh, which long term might not be doing you the full benefit. It might take you longer to progress by trying harder. Strange old thing, yoga. Now it's quite strong on the shoulders and the elbows, so you kind of shake and wobble a little bit. Now we're going to begin to bring ourselves back up. So wherever you find yourself, bring the hands into the floor. Make sure your chin is in towards your chest. Draw the belly into the spine as you exhale. And then once you've wrapped that in nicely, you can press into the hands, lengthen the arms up, begin to lift, and then use your core muscles to draw in. Now we need to come back into the second side. So we're going to bring the right foot a little bit closer in, press into the hands. We can release forwards. It's the easiest, safest thing to do with the knee joint on the left. I'm going to move the block over a little bit to the right. Allow myself to bring the left foot through. And then I'm going to just gently sit back. Remember, we're just going to be on one cheek. The heel of the leg that is underneath is out to the side of the hip. The knee points forwards and is on the floor. Bring the lifted knee, foot close enough in so the sole of the foot touches the floor. And ideally, the knee doesn't want to be hanging out too much to the side. Take our focus into the pelvis again. Going to let that belly button sink towards the back of the mat. So we're rolling the spine down and keeping the hands on the floor behind us and just walking that out to find a nice comfortable place. A little bend in the elbows if it feels good. Think about dropping the belly button to the floor. Remember everything we said about the knees lifting, any acute pain, move away from. And then we'll start to think about coming back up. So bring those hands back underneath. You draw the belly into the spine, hold it in, take a breath. And then on the exhale, you press into the hands to lift yourself up. And use your core muscles to draw in. Now I'm going to lean out towards the left a little bit and just lift the right leg completely off the ground to release it out. And then roll onto the right side so I can move the block out of the way. Swing the feet out to the side, come back up onto all fours. Take a little breath once I arrive, And we're just going to take a little bit of a cat-cow. So bring the hands right underneath the shoulders, knees about hip distance apart, bootlaces down. When you're ready, you're going to inhale the chest forwards. You keep the belly in, drawn in a little bit. Tilt the pelvis so the tailbone tucks under and it ripples through the spine and press into the hands and the shins. Inhale forwards. Exhale, tilt the tailbone. Inhale forwards. And exhale. We'll take two more. Last one coming forwards. We'll move back into a neutral position. You can take the hands a little bit further apart, just a fraction. Keep the hips over the knees. We're going to come into melting hearts. So we're going to walk the hands forwards and get a nice line between the body, between the hands, shoulders, and the hips. The belly's drawn in. When you bring the head in line with the rest of the body, we press into the shins a little bit. We press into the hands enough to start to get a sense of moving into muscles and outer joints in terms of what's holding us up. So those muscles will get tired quite quickly. So we have a cunning plan to deal with that. You're going to press your right hand down into the floor as strong as you can. I'm going to take the left hand away and bring that underneath and out towards the right side. And allow yourself to drop your shoulder and ear down to the floor and turn the palm up towards the sky on that left hand, which is now out to 90 degrees to the right of your body. So it's really a twisted version, some combination of melted heart and threading the needle. We'll take one more breath here. Now, coming out of it, allow yourself to walk the fingers of the outstretched hand just a little bit further in so you can release the shoulder a little bit, and then press into the floor to lift back up. Take the hands back out. Allow yourself to settle back down into that position you came from, into the melting heart, so the hands are a little bit further forwards. It's only half an inch, but it makes a big difference on the shoulders. We'll take a breath in, and we'll take the right hand out to the left side. Shoulder and ear to the floor. Just pressing into that hand a little bit, letting the chest rotate round. Belly is drawn in, so the breath is more in the ribs. And then to come out, just walk the fingers in another half an inch or so you can press down into the floor with a little bit of more of a release. Bring yourself gently back up onto all fours. I'm going to swing the feet out to the side, sit back down gently. I'm going to take the flat block again and bring that underneath. And allow myself to have a little cough, clear my throat. And just draw the flesh out a little bit on the cheeks. Bring the feet together. And I'll put a little bend into the knees, bring the hands onto the shins. Get a sense of lifting the body up out of the pelvis. Fold the thighs and hips over each other. Take the hands on top of the toes if you can, otherwise onto the ankles. Now I'm going to lift the body up and draw the shoulders back. So shoulders are moving away from the front of the mat. Going to see if I can lengthen the back of the legs out a little bit more. I'm going to do that by pressing one heel at a time to see how it feels. It's a very tiny movement, just millimeters, repeatedly just stretching out. Belly's drawn in. Keep lifting the chest forwards and up. Paschimottanasana, Seated forward fold. Last breath in. Going to release. So soften the knees, let the hands travel back. I'm going to take the hands behind a little bit, and then I'm going to deliberately lift the chest up towards the sky, squeeze the shoulder blades together, press down through the hands. Feet are still flexed towards me, pressing out through the heels. I'm going to draw myself back up into a straight seated position. I'm going to take a Janu Shirshasana, so I'm going to bring the right heel into the groin, turn the hips towards the front of the mat, and check that the thigh is on the ground. If not, Yodi block or a cushion, just so that you lift the floor up a little bit. So we want this to feel stable and not that it's overstretching. Make sure the front thigh points up towards the sky, so thigh, knee, shin, foot, all in the upward direction. Again, we put a little bend in the knee. Hands to the side of the leg. We lift the body up, fold the hips over the thigh. Ease our way forwards, and this time we'll let the spine gently round down. So the head comes down very slowly towards the end of that stretch. Try and lengthen the heel away in the long leg. It will put a significant stretch into the lower leg. And then we'll use the hands to walk back up. And we'll take that to the second side. So taking the legs out, lifting heel to the groin, just set square the body, little bend in the knee. Let ourselves get a little bit of lift. Hands either side. Fold over the thigh. Take the time. Let the head easily, slowly come down. So using the breath to help release down. And then if you're able to, start to lengthen the heel away a little more. We'll use the hands to lift back up. And lengthen both legs out. Give it a little shake. Now we're going to have the feet about hip distance apart. And we'll draw the right heel in and guide it towards the outside of the sitting hip bone, so towards the outside edge. So we retain that space between the foot and the thigh. Just drawing it in a little bit. Now at that point, my spine is kind of rolling back a little bit, so I'm going to allow myself to navigate around, press the left hand into the floor, and lift the body up, float past the right leg, and just take the hand out towards the left foot. Now, if you are not able to reach, that's fine. You can just hold on to that ankle, the shin. If you're able to, slide your fingers down to the outside edge little toe. Now, once you're in a position that you think, yeah, that's as far forward as I can get, you're going to start to press that right knee into the right armpit a little bit more. And then we'll see if we can release that hand and take it out to the right. So palm faces out and bend at the elbow. Now, if you're not able to get your hand towards your hip, then you really need to just stay there or take yourself back to the stage where you're holding on to the foot that's outstretched in front. If you're able to get there happily, you can take the left hand away from the floor, feed that behind. Oops. Take a little bind to the fingertips, and then try and turn the chest forwards and draw yourself up over out that through that thigh towards the front of the mat. And then we'll release. And we'll take the whole adventure to the second side. So remember, the feet are hip distance apart before we start. Left leg comes in and guides the heel out towards the hip. The toes actually point forwards. Take a little breath. Take the hand out to the right on the right side. Bring the left hand in. Wrap yourself around that foot and lean forwards. Take a little time. You can press into the fingers on the right side a little bit as well to help draw the self forwards. Take a little bend into the knee as well. And press that left knee into the back of the left armpit. And then we'll see if we can release and take the hand back towards the hip bone. Now, if you can't, that's fine. It just means your shoulder, is not able to get enough articulation. It might be you can't lean further enough forwards. You might have longer legs, and it can change the mechanics of that a little bit. So you stay where it's safe. If you feel that hip bone, you can take the fingers back around. Yes, if you can get that little bit of a finger lock, you can hold on to the trousers waistband as well. And then turn the chest forwards and lengthen yourself out over that front thigh. Front leg stays flexed so the toes point up towards the sky. And then we can release. And from there, we're going to take a well-earned Shavasana. So if you've got bolsters and you want to take a supportive version, you can do. If you've got extra layers of clothing you want to put on, you can do, because you will get cold quite quickly. When you're ready, knees high, hands behind, and just roll the spine down. If your spine feels like it's done a lot of work, keep the knees high, feet wide, and let the knees just drop in like a teepee. If it feels okay in the spine, and if you want to take the legs out desperately to the corner edges of the mat, you can do. Let the feet roll out, let the hands come out to the side, and then allow yourself to surrender to the floor. Some nice easy breaths, feeling the body, and then letting it go. Soften the jaw, the shoulders, the hips, the legs, arms, belly, and anything else you can think of. we'll begin to stretch the fingers and toes. Let the wrists and the ankles join in. Taking a deeper breath, we can let it exhale and use a big stretch to stretch out every fiber of the body. And then allow the legs to come back in towards the body. Take a hug and just draw the knees loosely into the chest and let yourself rock from side to side. You can swell the hips. You can do a little bit of everything. And then we're rolling onto the right side as we exhale. I'm going to stay here for about 3 breaths. And we'll follow that with a breath in. And on the exhale, use the hands to press down to lift up. And shimmy ourselves around into a comfortable seating posture. Just wriggle out the spine. Bring the hands in towards the heart as we take a breath in. And simply close the eyes, bow the head, draw the belly, bow to the floor, sealing the practice. On the inhale, we'll let the breath build the spine and lift the head. Allow the eyes to open. Namaste. Thank you very much for joining me. Have an excellent evening.